Good evening, folks, family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth to another episode of Disguise Coverage, part of the Cover One Sports Network. I am your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on the old Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro, 2 underscores, ANT. Give me a follow on the old Twitter. Normally in these intros, I like to make a couple jokes to amuse probably mainly myself, but some other people at times. People say they like them and they tweet me at it, but that's not important right now. I'm not going to do that because I've got a tremendous guest on tonight, which we always aim for tremendous guests here on Disguise Coverage, but he's also a little bit strapped for time tonight because he's a family man and he's a very busy man. He's in high demand. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in tonight's guest, Mr. John Ellis of the afternoon. Good. How are you? Afternoon host of Fox Sports Upstate in the Carolinas, the Roar podcast on Blue Wire Pods. Also a writer for Fansided. You've got, as you mentioned off air, you've got a million little jobs, and I know how busy you are. A million of them, but I'm pumped that you were able to take the time out to join me tonight. And I'm super pumped. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Look, I love one thing after another. Just keep it coming. All the work you can give me is fine. But the work you guys have done to cover two have been like second to none. I've been watching you guys grow. And, Buffalo, Carolina, it's sort of incestuous in a way. We've got a lot in common here with our pipeline. There's a lot to talk about there. Feels like home sweet home. So let's talk Panthers Bills, baby.
I know we've had so much of the jokes the last couple of years of like Carolina North and Buffalo South when referring to each other. And here we are matched up again in a game where both teams come in reeling a little bit after starting out, especially the Bills had so much expectations and they start out hot, but then even Carolina's looking good. Cam Newton comes back. They have the big win against, granted, the Kyler Murray-less Cardinals, but they blow out the Cardinals in Arizona. All these injuries start happening as they have throughout the year, all these things, but we'll start with the quarterback situation. You have been very loud and very boisterous over the last couple of days when it comes to Cam Newton and what Matt Rule has said in regards to the quarterback situation. Now we've had some Sam Darnold news drop today. It's just a lot of focus on this quarterback position in Carolina. Give us your thoughts as of right now on this quarterback situation, what you think of Cam Newton, and, what does Sam Darnold being activated, potentially mean for this team?
We'll start with Cam Newton. You brought up the acquisition there, and it was exciting. I mean, this was a big-time deal. Nobody saw this coming. Nobody I talked to around the organization saw this coming. Certainly, I didn't see it coming because it didn't end very well back in 2020.
Yeah, a little bit.
It was a pretty nasty split. As an AFC East guy, you know that firsthand how that went down. Since then, the Arizona game was very well constructed offensively. They got him in the game early. They ran a little sprint right option. They got him involved in the run game. It was vintage Cam Newton. So Colt McCoy was out, of course. We know that. Carolina got off to a great start offensively, and then they could pursue, pin their ears back defensively. And that's where they're at their best, honestly, especially against a guy like Colt McCoy, who's not Kyler Murray. He's good. He's not Kyler Murray. So it was a tailor-made game for a Cam Newton return. And one thing we had talked about, all right, this is great. Now you're coming back home against Ron Rivera and Marty Herney and a lot of familiar faces in Washington, which has become the second pipeline for this Panthers franchise other than Buffalo, the third being the New York Giants. So they're scattered everywhere. I digress, though. This was a game they had to really win to keep that positive vibe going with Cam Newton. And unfortunately, Cam did his part. Played a very good game, probably one of his best games since maybe that 2018 season with North Turner here. Mistake-free, hit McCaffrey on a nice seam route there. Ran the ball well, but the defense didn't show up. And they got run all over by former Panthers OC Scott Turner. Norv was not a part of that, obviously. He's moved on, but Scott has been a big part of Washington's success now, and he's done a great job. Ron Rivera wanted that game badly, whether he'll admit it or not. Cam Newton downplayed it all week. It was very deflating. I don't know the locker room. You can ask them, but from a fan perspective, and those in the media who cover this team, you could sense it that, okay, wow, this is a big climax here with the Washington game coming in, and you coming off the Arizona win, and Cam is back, and he's starting. And now we go from that to the Miami game where the offensive line, this is a storyline we got to talk about too.
Yep.
It's not good. It's been probably this bad once in team history. That's the year 2000 when Steve Berlin, I think he's still running for his life somewhere in the CBS booth. Trevor's blown side.
That's a good one. That's good.
Poor Steve got the hammer this year. It hadn't been the sacks really this year. It's been the inability to stop the pressure. They're just getting too much pressure inside. And Miami just, zero blitzed them to death.
All day.
They follow the Lamar Jackson template that worked the week before. Cam threw off, balance there. Old habits creeped in. Although I will say this, you look at the tape, and I defend Newton at times, but you got to balance the scales because the narrative gets out of hand with Cam that he's cooked, he's baked, he's 32 years old, but he's really 40. His body's 50. Go ahead and retire. He's still very good at this position. He just hasn't had much to work with here since rehabbing from that shoulder and foot injury. Then you come back to this game that we just saw with, obviously, Carolina, very disappointing home loss to Atlanta. And Cam had a pick six. Matt Rule's going to be a part of this conversation tonight with these next 30 minutes I've got with you because it's been very strange the way he's handled this quarterback situation. Not only structurally from a roster standpoint, but with the media, the message.
Yeah, he's been so vocal and direct about certain things that you would kind of wish he'd keep under the vest a little bit.
Exactly. So to that point, Cam throws a pick. A couple of plays end up on the ground. There's one fumble where the center trips him up. I put that on the center and Hubbard for not getting the ball, and a little bit of Newton. But, Matt Rule gets up in his presser today. I never heard Belichick do this. I never heard Ron Rivera in all my years covering the team throw Cam Newton under the bus the way, Matt Rule did. And maybe that's his style. Maybe he's like, I don't see this throwing him under the bus. That's just me calling him out. Maybe he's got an agreement with him. But I don't think Matt and Cam are quite there yet with their relationship to where he can go out in the press and pretty much rip Cam for putting the ball on the ground when it really wasn't his fault. There was a second, quote, fumble that Rule had made a big deal about in the presser. It was a low snap to his right out of shotgun. He dribbled it off the ground and picked up 5 yards. So it was all based on the negatives. And then the postscript of that was, we're definitely not in a place yet where we can focus on having just one quarterback, which I'm just telling you right now, I'm not even in the fan boat anymore. As an analyst, I am apoplectic at this idiotic.
That's a good word.
It's an absolute ridiculous strategy. It never works. I don't understand. Matt Rule, who said today in his press conference, no, I've never really done this in the college level either. So that's news too. I didn't follow his Temple career enough to know that this is kind of uncharted waters for him. PJ Walker, the backup who is platooning with Cam now, even said today that, of course, you get out of rhythm. So it sounds like nobody really wants to do this other than Matt Rule. No. The fans don't want it. I think a lot of the fans are like, look, if it's going to be PJ, fine, go with him. But this back and forth, they're out of the playoff race now. It's that time of year again that we've come to know since 2018 where it's like, all right, good little couple months there, and now it's time to wrap it up. And this time, though, it's a little different. You've got to figure out this quarterback situation. Sam Darnold's coming back, as you mentioned. I think they've got to play him at some point in their eyes. In my eyes, I've seen enough. Okay. But they've invested, let's just face it, 3 draft picks and a 5th-year option's already been inked for Sam Darnold. He ain't going anywhere. So if he's a backup next year, he's a pricey one. They got to at least see what they have. Matt Rule, it's a big stretch for him. I know they're out of the playoffs. Buffalo, that's a great test. You got Tampa twice. You've got New Orleans, who's always tough, even if they're injured. I don't want to say this is Matt playing for his job, but with every passing day, you see more people sort of joining the chorus. I don't want to say that I'm leading it. I'm not, but I'm just going to tell you right now, when Matt Rule was hired, I had these very questions about would these skills translate? Very general program builder. Yep. He builds programs. He rehabilitates bad programs. Right. I think he's terrific. He's a good dude. He's a great football coach. Does he have a schematic edge in the NFL? He does not. He's not a Kyle Shanahan. He's not a McVay. So when you fire Joe Brady and you're left with Baylor coordinators now exclusively and a heavy Baylor Temple staff, what's your edge? What are you bringing to the table, Matt Rule? Is the program working? Are you building from scratch young? No, you're not. You're going to get Stephon Gilmore. Sam Darnold, he's not a rookie. You claim he's young, he's not a rookie. We've seen a lot of tape.
Yeah,
And
they've
then
been in this weird stop-start kind of. It's so weird in terms of are they rebuilding? But then they're like, well, we're gonna have to stop the rebuild and we're gonna go acquire guys for a win now mode. But then you don't have the core foundational pieces for that win now mode. It's been very interesting, and I like that you mentioned the potential idea of Matt Rule maybe coaching for his job. But you mentioned Joe Brady. Joe Brady gets fired, who, was kind of the talk of the town coming out of college a couple years ago, gets fired during the and maybe, I don't know too much of the inner workings with Carolina, but he gets fired towards the back end of the bye week as you're approaching the start of the next week, which maybe isn't the worst thing, but I would think you'd want to get that done so that way you have almost a full 2 weeks to start instituting your new system with your new offensive coordinator. Even that was kind of weird, but, Joe Brady goes away. Jeff Nixon is now the offensive coordinator. You mentioned his ties to Matt Rule at Baylor. So he was Rule's offensive coordinator when he was at Baylor. He has I looked it up, crazy extensive background as a running backs coach. He was a running backs coach at Princeton, Shippensburg, Chattanooga, Temple, for Miami Dolphins, Baylor, and then with the Carolina Panthers. And now he's up at that OC position. Been around a little bit. Obviously a small sample size with just the one real full game under his belt. What does this offense start to look like now with him at the helm? How much of a difference do you expect from the offense that was under Joe Brady, and what can we expect this weekend?
You mentioned Shippensburg, whatever that is. I guess it'll look kind of like that. 2 quarterbacks, so why not 3? We'll go 4. I mean, we got Matt Barkley around. I don't know, really. I looked at the tape. A lot of RPO, probably too much of it. They really were heavy RPO on the glance stuff, the slants. It became a little predictable, and I think Dean Pease sort of said, hey, guys, this rookie coordinator's running the RPO glance. Like every series, let's scoot somebody underneath that route. And they ran one of those little undercuts and went for a pick 6. The offense, honestly, it's not an easy gig for Jeff Nixon. I admire him because he's one of the few guys on the staff who has actually been an NFL coach for a while. He was Miami's running back coach, San Francisco as well. So he's got some bona fides, but he's only called plays on a small scale at the college level. And again, I come back to this being a challenge. When Ron Rivera was fired midseason a couple of years ago, that team completely lost their focus. And I don't want to say they tanked. There's some good guys on that team, but they just were not orchestrated. And Perry Fuel was the interim, and it was just a mess. And that's what happens. And now you kind of got a similar situation where people think, okay, you know what? Maybe this wasn't Joe Brady's offense all along. And I think as we saw the season go along here, Matt Rule talked about wanting to be a running team. I had a conversation with Greg Cosell, Billy Marshall, and I did on our podcast. And Greg brought up a point, all this talk about analytics and forward thinking and sports science. And he said, guys, I want to tell you right now, I know Matt Rule a little bit. You know how Greg is. I know him a little bit. I've known the guys around him. He wants to run the ball. And just be aware for that. You talk about passing, number of passes in a game. He's going to try to run first. 21, 22 personnel, 12 personnel, heavy. He wants to be a smash mouth team. And when Joe Brady was hired initially as the OC, the pass game coordinator for LSU, with no real full bore run game experience to go with it felt at the time a little awkward because he's young. He's a hot commodity, obviously, some good ideas. But Matt Rule has never coached on this level. Maybe he needs like a Jim Caldwell type that's been a head coach before. Other guys that might have been available. Just somebody with some background in that capacity that can, teach you. I just think Matt is such an alpha male. He came in with a $7 million contract, 7 years. Like, no, I can do this. I'm going to bring my guys. And to that point, he mentioned with Joe Brady the day he fired him in the press conference after that, he admitted he went out of his, quote, comfort zone, which is another bit of a red flag if you read tea leaves. I'm not trying to be too much on the pressers here, but he talks a lot. And when you talk a lot, you reveal a lot. And when he said, I went out of my comfort zone, that it's an indicator that, okay, you know what? I really didn't want a pass game coordinator all along. I think I just wanted somebody like Jeff Nixon or maybe Anthony Lynn, somebody who could just smash mouth this game and we could run and pound and ground it. Around the midseason mark after the Giants game, this became Matt Rule's offense, I think, to the point now we're in that game with Jeff Nixon. You saw him with about 3 or 4 laminated play cards in his hand. It looked like he was ordering from Applebee's. He was on the sideline, and he was trying to do his best Sean Payton. I like Matt. I like Jeff Nixon. They're good guys, good football guys. I don't know if they belong at this level at coordinator, coaching positions for a team that's owned by the richest, wealthiest, most resourceful owner in the National Football League. Seems to me they could probably do better than their situation right now. This is why this last stretch, to me, is important. Now, does Jeff Nixon do anything to enhance the offense as they go? I think you'll see maybe some more gap concepts. They'll balance gap with zone. Wide zone's the name of the game here with McCaffrey, but he's out. You don't have backs that really contrast from him, though. It's Chuba Hubbard, who's kind of a one-cut guy. Amir Abdullah's got some wings. He can fly. Reggie Bonathan's not getting the touches right now. They don't really have a viable fullback other than Giovanni Ricci, who doesn't play a lot these days. So it's going to be mostly one-back stuff, probably mostly out of gun, probably mostly out of pistol, a lot of RPO. And I think they're going to rely on Cam. I mean, this is not a bad thing either, because I think all the talk about Cam wear and tear, I mean, I can break another myth for you. He's where he is now with his shoulder because of stuff that happened within the pocket. When he runs, he keeps himself pretty clean. There were 3 hits that happened in the passing game that really took that shoulder out, and it's just getting back to normal now. But he's a good runner of the football. I think he's got his burst back now more than he did maybe like 18. That foot was the big concern. Yeah. So it's interesting. What do you do? If you want to run the ball, Cam Newton's your guy. You put Darnold in there, he's going to get another concussion because you're trying to run him, or at least Brady did, like a Cam Newton, the run option stuff, read option stuff. And he almost got slaughtered down there a couple of times against Dallas, against Atlanta. PJ Walker, look, he's a turnover machine. I like him. He's a good story. I don't know what Jeff Nixon's going to do, but ultimately it's Matt Rule's call. And he point blank said today, as we record this on a Wednesday night, that related to the one quarterback question, are you ready for that? And his answer was no, we're not there yet. So you're a year and a half into your coaching career.
Right.
You can't settle on one quarterback. He's been here for 35 days now. He's a veteran. I think he can understand your principles and concepts in this truncated Joe Brady playbook. But what am I
yeah. Another little.
That's the thing. Why even discuss?
Yeah. Why put that out there? Why give that little bit to be nibbled on for fans and media, especially with everything else that's going on with the team? And, staying with that offense, you talked about Cam and the running game, and you mentioned something earlier in terms of this offensive line and the pressures that they give up. Not so much sacks, but pressures. The Bills are good at generating pressures. They don't get home too much, but they generate pressures. This O-line, a little bit of some injury concern up front with John Miller. But let's talk about that offensive line. How have they performed this year, and against a Bills front that really likes to rotate? They don't blitz a lot. They just want to run for a 4-man rushes. They're going to throw some simulated pressures and creepers and stuff. How do you expect the Panthers offensive line to hold up against the Bills defensive front coming into this game?
Not well at all. Here's the problem. Look,
so blunt.
It's the tape. I've got it out there. It's the worst line I've seen in terms of pass protection. If you guys stunt at all, it's going to be a nightmare because you have the horses up front. You have like Ed Oliver, guys like that who are very gifted athletically and very quick. You get Edmonds in there on a blitz occasion. It'll be a nightmare because they can't. First of all, they're not playing guys in their true positions, in my opinion. Again, not my team. All credit to Matt Rule and offensive line coach Pat Meyer. They're NFL coaches, and I'm not. But I know what I'm looking at in the tape, and Brady Christensen is being plugged in at guard right now on the right side. Okay. He's always more comfortable on his left side. The coaches want to try him on the right side, and it's a big issue about arm length. His arms aren't long enough. He's got 32-inch arms. So much like Jason Peters, Slater, other guys, but I digress. They continue to play Cam Irving, who is now holding the media accountable and chewing the media out in pressers for asking questions that are, quote, dividing the locker room. There's a messaging issue between left guard Dennis Daly and Irving about who missed an assignment late in the game, and they're sort of bickering back and forth. They can't even pick up basic stunts. It's a poorly coordinated group. They're all professionals. Look, there's a fine line between embarrassing somebody here on a station, on a show, and just being honest. And it's just an embarrassing piece of tape. And I've talked to NFL players before like this to their face because I've developed relationships. And it's like, look, that's not your best. And they're like, dude, I know it sucks. I don't think these guys would take too kindly to hearing that. They may hear this, they may not. I've been talking about it for weeks. I don't care. It's bad. They need to play the young guys. They have Deontay Brown from Alabama. They gave him one snap last week. You're back out. Let's put Dennis Staley back in. It's not that these guys are all bad. I think Cam Irving would be okay at guard. I think Christensen is a good left tackle. He's athletic enough to do it. He fits into the Cam Newton run game scheme here. You can get him out in space. Taylor Moton's a beast on the right side, but he's by himself. And then John Miller, you mentioned, had a really good, solid campaign last year. He was on the COVID list this year a little bit, and I just think he's regressed. You got to play your young guys. In terms of what Buffalo can do, look, I would just bring 4. I would stunt. I would bring some games, some ET stuff. Occasionally blind. The blindside stuff seems to be affecting the overload stuff. Okay. They're not picking up much because McCaffrey is arguably not only the best route runner on the team, but probably the best blocker on the team, which is sad.
Oh, okay. Not great.
No McCaffrey. McCaffrey has saved this team on several occasions this year from having catastrophic plays, but also in a couple of the long touchdown bombs that Darnold threw, it was McCaffrey's blocking that made it all happen. So they don't have that. They have Abdullah and they have Hubbard, who are not very good run blocking backs. You may see Reggie Bonifant back there, or pass blocking backs, I'm sorry. I don't know about the O-line. I think they need to be quick game screen, RPO, stuff like that. But Sean McDermott's so good at what he does here. Leslie Frazier as well. I know things haven't been great lately. You guys got run all over by a couple of powerhouses in the AFC, but
a little bit.
I just don't. Unless Cam Newton has one of those vintage games where he can just get things moving. But he doesn't have Jordan Gross anymore. He doesn't have Ryan Khalil or Andrew Norwell. These are not very skilled players overall, and the ones that aren't very experienced, and they're being played out of position. It's frustrating for fans. As an analyst, I look at it and I shake my head and I'm like, can you just please move Christensen to left tackle now that you're out of the playoffs? Let's see what it looks like. We're going to go back to Cam Irving. Okay, that's fine. I talked to scouts around the league that agree with me on this. We talked to people who know. They're all like, okay, yeah, it doesn't make sense. You drafted this guy at left tackle. Give it a look. The offensive line has been very bad. It's been very bad. It's been very poorly coached too. And everybody has handed. Matt Rule, Joe Brady, Pat Meyer, and the players. And even Taylor Moton at times has not been at his best. It's a far cry from like 2008 Carolina Panthers with Jeff Otall, Jordan Gross, Travell Wharton, Ryan Khalil. Even like the latter years of Ron Rivera, John Matsko, the O-line coach, was just working miracles. And I don't see that from this staff. Again, it's all about how are you preparing your guys? Are you putting them in the best position? Maybe use some 6 O-line stuff, some jumbo XL, something different to solidify. It's a very stale offense right now. It's pretty predictable. Sean, I think, will find a way to neutralize it, unfortunately for Panthers fans, but we'll see what happens. Maybe a couple turnovers. It's a crazy league this year.
Let's flip over to the better side of the ball for the Carolina Panthers, a defense that is 10th in defensive DVOA, 6th against the pass, 21st against the rush. They have one of the biggest draft crushes I've had in recent memory, Jeremy Chin. I loved him so much coming out last year, and he went to Carolina, and I was like, okay, I followed him. I have a decent knowledge of the Panthers defense because I love Jeremy Chin so much. Brian Burns was an awesome prospect coming out as well. They kind of lead that defense, Derek. You have Derek Brown there. Also, I know he's hurt now. J.C. Horn was a huge draft crush of mine this year, and then he looked so good for Carolina in the preseason and early in the year before he got hurt. But this Panthers defense is, I think, better than people realize. I feel like not a lot of people are paying attention to the Panthers as a whole because of their record and because of the losses they've had, and any talk around them is really Cam-based or Matt Rule-based now. But this is a good defense that they have in Carolina. Let's talk about that. How does this defense function? What's their MO? What do they like to do? And just how good can they be?
Yeah, it's a very versatile unit. We start with the front, as we always do. And this is where they got it right in Carolina. And I suppose Matt Rule deserves his share of credit for that. And I think Phil Snow deserves probably an even higher degree of credit for coordinating it. But They built from the inside out on defense, from the front to back. They took care of their needs along the defensive end position. Brian Burns, that's a Ron Rivera pick now. That was his last year. But he's been very well groomed and developed under this staff with Phil Snow. The defensive staff has done a nice job. Al Holcomb, a former Panthers assistant that came back and was a holdover, he's done a great job with the linebacking core and helping coordinate the run game defense. Problem is, here's the secret sauce if you're an opponent. And I think Buffalo, they've been up and down in this department, but it depends on Allen's health, I think. If you can build a bit of a lead just early, if you can, I would imagine Buffalo can, given their talent level comparative. You get up on them early. This Panthers team is broken in two ways, okay? So number one, what makes them so good defensively is their speed on the edge and their ability inside to penetrate. Now, Brown is a good space eater. They have Bravian Roy at nose tackle, who's been surprisingly very good, a rookie out of surprise, Baylor last year.
What a shock.
One of the good ones. But then on the second level, I think Shaq Thompson has really come into his own this year. Has it been perfect? No. You look at the run game, and people are quick to say, oh, Shaq, there you go again. You're giving up a gun. There's a lot that goes into run fills and run fits and scraping and all that. And it's hard to know in the game until you look at the tape. Shaq's tape has been really good, and he's been high motor. Jermaine Carter's been a good player. I mean, he's had his ups and downs, but to kind of backfill for Luke Kuechly is not an easy job. That's what they've had to face here. They had Denzel Perriman. They did not like his culture fit, apparently. They ended up dealing him. He's a free agent acquisition. They traded him to the Raiders, I think, for a late-round pick. He now leads the NFL in tackles now. I mean, that's can be distorted. You know that. His coverage skills are not that great, but he's a thumper. They maybe could have used him, but they got a draft piece in return. The secondaries you mentioned, Jeremy Chin plays all over the field, plays mostly high safety, plays in the box. Probably should play in the box a little more, if you ask me. It's where he's his best. Palomalu type of player. Get him down there inside the numbers at times. Get him closer to the line where he can have an impact on the run game, but also get up on these tight ends. And then, you got some good corners there. You got C.J. Henderson, who's a up-and-coming prospect they traded for. He's been up and down. Will that be a short-term win? Probably not. It's a long-term developmental type piece. They got rid of Dan Arnold, their recently acquired tight end. So they're signing and trading and signing and trading. Pretty crazy. And then, of course, you mentioned J.C. Horn. He was so good. And this is the thing about Horn I'm looking forward to. And I'll get to your question about how you can beat this defense now. But Horn, that's a big one like McCaffrey. These are two very dynamic pieces on each side of the ball. Because what Horn did so well, he traveled. He could play slot. He could play the Z. He could play outside. He could, roam. He could play a little safety if you had to. He could creep down to the box and blitz and run, stop, and all run fills, everything he asked for from a physical corner. His tackling got better, but again, 3 games in, he hurts his foot. And then he's, unfortunately out for what looks like the season now. There's going to be no playoff run. AJ Bouye, guys like that. Dante Jackson's hurt. He's been pretty good until he got smoked a little bit by Terry McLaurin in that Washington game. Bottom line, look, you better lead against this team a little bit. It's twofold. Like I said, number one, the defense is light, and their MO is attacking in 3rd and long, 3rd and 6+. That's their comfort zone. You get in a situation like it's the Miami game where you just dink and dunk away like Tua does, and he's like 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 3. That's problematic because overall they ran for 2.9 yards against Carolina in that game. It was not a bad effort, but they were just like 40 runs, and they just churned and churned because the short RPO passing game was like an extension. My advice to Buffalo, not that I owe you guys any, but because I've given you plenty. We're giving you a general manager, a head coach, several good players over the years. My advice would be just offensively, if you can play Josh Allen, do it. If not, get Trubisky in there and maybe get him involved in the running game a little bit to put those ends in conflict. I don't know. He's a pretty athletic guy. Maybe run some RPO stuff with him. But if you don't, stick to your running game, keep it simple, and let your defense do the job, because as much as I love Newton, I love DJ Moore, I love Robbie Anderson on that side of the ball, problem there is protection. Nothing can hold up to let these routes develop. And even Newton, who's as good as anybody right now, I'll say the one area I think he has regressed in a little bit is potentially the post routes, the 9 routes in terms of accuracy because of the shoulder. And that's going to happen. But his pocket movement is so clean now. And I think that year with Belichick and McDaniels, And the QB coach, he named Jed Fish. I think that helped him a ton because they reestablished some core fundamentals. So there's some things from Cam that I like. I just don't want him to have to pass 40 times a game in Buffalo, 20 degrees, wind blowing. That's not Cam Newton football. Cam Newton football is it's run 45 times, keep it simple, get the ball in DJ Moore's hands. I think Buffalo just play good fundamental football. Turnovers are there for the taking with this team. They fumble it quite a bit. Whenever you have a new coordinator, you run new type of concepts. You might see DJ Moore in the backfield a little bit. I'd look for that because they're trying to get him the ball quickly. There's really no tight end game to speak of. Tommy Trimble is a decent receiver and a very good blocker. He's the number 82 on the field. He's from Notre Dame, very good prospect. Thomas is an athletic guy, but they just don't feed him the rock enough, and he's not open a whole lot. So the lack of tight end, it's not your old, dad's Panthers, as they say. There's no Greg Olsen threatening the seam. And, you got these tall receivers used to have like Funchess and even Kelvin in his prime and guys like that. It's a shorter group, but they can move. And Robbie has some height and he's getting involved. So maybe he's the X factor. He's had a history with Buffalo. Maybe he can come back home to the NFC or the AFC East and go nuts. I would just say it all starts really with getting a lead and building a lead. Obviously, against a team like Carolina, they're not equipped at all to play from behind right now until they can prove it. Under Matt Rule, just by the way, when they've had a chance in 2 years now, when tied or trailing by less than 8 points or 8 or less, basically with a chance for a game-tying or game-winning drive, 13 times they're 0 for 13.
Oh.
So there you go.
That speaks volumes. Man,
Takes a village to be that bad.
Man, you were a wealth of knowledge on tonight's episode, and I appreciate your brutal honesty about the situation in Carolina. Yeah, in terms of what they've been so far this year and what they look like coming into this game and what we can expect to see in this game. And like I mentioned in the beginning, you are a very busy man. I appreciate you taking the time out to join me and talk some ball and shed some insight on this matchup. And why don't you let all the good people know, just in case they missed the intro, who you are, what you do, where they can find you, socials, shows, anything and everything you want to plug, have at it. The floor is yours.
Let me get my script out here because it's linking. I'm just kidding here. No, I host and just read it off. That's right. We host a show on Fox Sports Upstate called Game On. It's a afternoon drive show here in the upstate of South Carolina. We cover Panthers, NFL, all that stuff. It's on the iHeartRadio app. You can hear us from 4 to 6 p.m. We have Stephen Ruiz tomorrow on our show from The Ringer. He's going to join us. Eric McLean from ESPN will join us to talk about all this crazy stuff going on in college football right now. But again, we're very NFL focused towards the end of the week. On Blue Wire podcast, we host The Roar. That's Billy Marshall, myself. We've been doing this for 103 episodes now, which I don't know how we haven't killed each other yet. But he's a much brighter guy than I am. I've learned a lot from old Bill, and he's a fun guy to work with. And he actually referred me to you on this show. So
yes, sir.
He's a good dude, and we're enjoying that. I write for Fansided on occasion. You can check them out at Cat Crave Blog. That's the Panthers affiliate. And, of course, for iHeartRadio, as you see the old signage back there, you got to plug your work, Jenny. iHeartRadio, I do work on the Clemson athletic side for basketball and football pregame. Of course, they got a big game in the Cheez-It Bowl coming up. Cheez-It Bowl time, baby.
That's fun.
No college playoffs. We're doing Cheez-It time. And then on the same night, they play Coach K at home in his farewell tour. So a lot going on from our end. Thank you so much. The plugs were very gracious, and love your work, man. You guys do a hell of a job there, and go Panthers. And if not the Panthers, go Bills.
I appreciate you, John. Thank you so much. And yeah, you were awesome as always. We got a super chat donation from John DeMarchi, one of our longtime listeners, who wanted to shout you out there for being a fantastic guest. So I appreciate you, and go home now, rest, go take care of the family, and do all the stuff you got to do. And we'll talk in the future, man.
At One Panther Place on Twitter. That's where we live. So just come find me tonight, and we'll be up putting up the clips. Thanks, man.
You're a fantastic follow. Yeah, hell yeah. Have a good night.
Thanks, buddy.
Bye. Tremendous guest on the show tonight. We have continued this string of bangers when it comes to guest after guest after guest. And John, I appreciate you throwing up the super chat there for another fellow John. It's important to support people who have the same name as you. I don't do that. I go by the Highlander model where there can only be one. So I try to eliminate any and all other Anthonys because I just need to be the only remaining Anthony. Man, John, was like I said, a tremendous wealth of knowledge. And he paints a very interesting picture of this Carolina Panthers team coming into this week. The Bills, as we've diagrammed several times on this show, and like you've seen on Cover One in general, we've diagrammed how the Bills have kind of limped along at certain points this year. And that's no pun intended on Josh Allen's recent injury. Although he looks pretty good. He was seen out and about in Buffalo last night with no boot and no limp. So that's a very encouraging thing. But this is a matchup the Bills have to win for a multitude of reasons, just for posterity's sake and the sake of standings and moving forward as they go towards the playoffs. But as John outlined in fantastic detail, this Panthers team limps into this game significantly. They have not played well from an organizational standpoint. Again, not just on the field perspective. There's a lot going on behind the scenes, and I guess in front of the scenes as well, with how straightforward and vocal head coach Matt Rule has been in the media recently with what he's saying about the QB situation and the team. And there's just a lot to unpack when it comes to this Carolina Panthers team. And I say all that to say, when you pair that with the detail that John went into about the Panthers, this is a very, 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 very winnable game for the Buffalo Bills. I don't want to say a get-right game, but the Bills need to win out going forward. And if the Bills do win out and the Patriots lose to the Colts, the Bills can win this AFC East. If the Pats lose to the Dolphins, the Bills can win this AFC East. The division is still up for grabs. The season is still very much in play for the Buffalo Bills. I know we're not as high as a fan base on the Bills as we were to start the season, when everybody thought they were going to go 1 or 2 losses, or some people legitimately thought they'd go undefeated en route to an AFC championship or Super Bowl appearance and all these things. And they've come back down to earth a little bit for a variety of reasons, but this is very much a winnable game. And John went into great detail about the Panthers. I'm going to talk about some matchup stuff now as we start to bring this show home on the back half. But before I do that, you guys know the drill. I bring it up at different times. You know the show is sponsored by One Pie Pizza. Oh, I got it right this time. I guess the sign. Yay. I'm always terrible at which is the right or the left because the camera's reversed. One Pie Pizza. You see the logo up there in the top right of your screen to my left. And it's up there because this show is sponsored by One Pie Pizza. Delicious sweet sauce pizza, homemade blue cheese, fantastic people, a family atmosphere when it comes to their staff and how they operate as a business, which is rare to find nowadays. And I genuinely mean that. I'm not just saying it. I wouldn't have partnered with them if the kind of people they are didn't match the quality of the pizza and food that they have. It is delicious. I say it all the time. I'm so happy that they are a partner on the show. So happy that they're a part of Cover One. The online menu is in the episode show notes, whether you are watching on YouTube, whether you are listening on any one of the podcasting apps and platforms. Their Twitter handle there is at One Pie Pizza, WNY. Go and check them out. They're fantastic. Open Monday through Saturday, 11 to 8. Sometimes they open on Sundays, and they're open Monday through Saturday, 11 to 8, or until sold out, which happens to them because they are in such high demand. They will sell out. I have experienced that myself. They're fantastic. Go give them a follow. Go check them out. Get yourself some One Pie Pizza. Good pizza. Good people. You really can't go wrong when it comes to them. Now, let's talk about some matchup stuff now, right? So John set the table for this Carolina Panthers offense, and I want to go into it a little more. So Cam Newton, Bills fans are familiar with Cam Newton now after how he played in New England, and I think there was a lot of, see the comment here from Ben. Ben saying we need to get some One Pie Pizza up here in Ontario. I want to try it. Take a day off. Come drive down to Buffalo. I don't know what the COVID situation is like of getting back into Canada, but that's fine. Stay in Buffalo for as long as you need to and just get One Pie Pizza every single day. And I feel like it's going to be worth it. It's that good. But yeah, maybe they'll branch out and hit up the Canadian market. I appreciate you, Ben. Cam Newton, Bills fans are familiar with him. I think everyone in the NFL is familiar with Cam after his run with the Carolina Panthers when kind of set the world on fire for a little bit. Had that MVP season where Carolina went to the Super Bowl and things did not work out for Cam and that offense in the Super Bowl against the Broncos defense. And Cam goes to New England, doesn't work out in New England. He's there again in New England to start this year, and then he's gone out of the league. Then he's back with Carolina, which he very vocally and adamantly announced when he scored against Arizona on his first drive back. But Cam is still very much the same quarterback that I feel a lot of us have come to know when it comes to Cam Newton. John was tremendous in talking about how this running game is what is needed to make this offense go, and they cannot sit back and let Cam just pass all over because that doesn't work. And I don't think that'll work against the Bills defense, one, because of this matchup that we're going to get into, but two, just because of what Cam Newton still is. So this is a very interesting one. So last week, Cam Newton threw 23 passes in week 14. So 23 passes last week in week 14. Only 2 of them went above 15 yards. On the year of quarterbacks with at least 50 dropbacks, Cam Newton has an average depth of target of 7 yards. That is 42nd out of 48 qualifying QBs. So, Devin, appreciate you. Devin saying, joining late, sorry, but did I hear that guest say that Cam Newton was as good as anybody? In some regards, not as a holistic quarterback, but I don't want to go too much into that. You're going to have to replay it and see what's up. But that guest, John Ellis, was fantastic. So Cam, 23 passes last week. Only 2 of them went above 15 yards. Again, on the year of quarterbacks with at least 50 dropbacks, he has an average depth of target of 7 yards. That is 42nd out of 48 qualifying QBs. So he is not pushing the ball downfield. This Carolina offense has not gotten vertical at all. We might see that a little bit with new offensive coordinator Jeff Nixon. And they do have some of the horses for it with DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. Both those guys can burn. They got tremendous speed. They can get vertical in a hurry. But like John mentioned, this offensive line for Carolina has not played well, whether it's schematics, whether it's talent. They have given up pressure. They have not provided a consistent pocket for Cam Newton. And as mentioned by John earlier in the show, the quarterbacks for Carolina get pressured so quickly that those longer routes, those vertical routes, those upfield routes don't have time to develop because the quarterback is under duress so fast and in such a high regard. That should be a plus matchup for this Buffalo Bills team. And to stick with the quarterbacks, because Cam is going to be the guy coming into this week, unless, I don't know, if Sam Darnold really does start, but continuing to talk about Cam, 50.7% of his throws have come between 0 and 9 yards. So basically 51% of his throws are under 10 yards. He keeps it short and between 0 to 9. And 32% of that 50.7% come in the center of the field and 12% come to the right. So Cam Newton, average depth of target 7 yards, 50.7% of his passes come between 0 and 9 yards. 32% of that is in the center. 12% of that is to the right. Expect to see that short area worked time and time again. And that's what we've come to expect with Cam. We're going to see Cam run the ball. We're going to see RPO. We're going to see zone read. We're going to see QB sweeps and QB powers. And then we're going to see him throw slants and sticks and quick outs and things like that. He's going to work that under 10-yard area. We're going to see him throw some screens. The Carolina Panthers on the year, as I go to my numbers here, they have a 10% screen usage rate, which is a decent usage rate when it comes to screens. I don't expect to see them be able to stretch or test the Bills vertically in this game, especially with what their offensive line has been unable to do when it comes to pass protection, but even more so given the throwing limitations still of Cam Newton. So he's going to work the short 0 to 9 yard area. He's going to work in the center. He's going to work to the right. Expect to see that continue in this game. And again, some more numbers about Cam. He's only attempted 5 passes above 20 yards. Granted, there's sample size here. He hasn't played the entire year, but he's only attempted 5 passes over 20 yards on the year. He's got 38 attempts from 0 to 9 yards, and he only has 20 attempts 10 yards and above. So again, just to reinforce that notion and that idea that Cam is really going to go hard in that 0 to 9 yard area. And as we spoke about earlier in the show, this offense for Carolina, I mean, they fired their offensive coordinator. They've had quarterback issues. They're going back and forth between Cam and PJ Walker. And even when Darnold was in there, PJ Walker came in, and just a lot of nonsense going on with this offense. This offense is 30th in DVOA. And in that offensive DVOA breakdown, they're 32nd in passing DVOA for the offense and 22nd in rushing DVOA. So this is an offensive unit that has struggled. This is a plus matchup for the Buffalo Bills, who come in still with the number 1 ranked defense in terms of DVOA and the second best unit in DVOA against the pass and 8th against the rush. And I mentioned it on Twitter. I mentioned it here on the show. I really wanted to drive home the idea of DVOA and why it's so great. It's because it measures a team's efficiency by comparing success on every single play to a league average based on situation and opponent. So it weights things based on situation, based on opponent. It recognizes and has the ability to rank and track and trend for guys who run for 5 yards on, or a team that runs for 5 yards on 3rd and 4 versus a team that runs for 5 yards on 3rd and 20. Those things have a different value, right? A 10-yard run from the 10-yard line in the red zone is different than a 10-yard run from your own 35. And then you add down and distance and opponent and all these things. It corrects for situation and opponent. And I just really think it's tremendous. I use that as a metric really to kind of tell the tale of the tape when it comes to teams, regularly on Twitter, regularly on the show. And it breaks down the entire season play-by-play, comparing success on each play to the league average based on a number of variables, including, as I mentioned, down and distance, location on the field, current score, quarter, opponent quality, all that stuff. So DVOA is something that I really trust in and value. And the Bills have a heavy DVOA advantage when it comes to the overall, but especially just Bills defense versus Panthers offense. Heavy advantage for them in that regard. Continuing to talk about this Carolina Panthers offense. So last week, week 14, was their first week with their new offensive coordinator. And also, I just want to mention, I know obviously a ton of Bills fans in here as we speak about some Panthers stuff. Any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns you guys got about the Panthers, or because we are a Bills show, questions, thoughts, comments, concerns about the Bills, you want to vent any frustrations, if you have any concerns, whatever you got, feel free to throw them in the chat. I love the back and forth and the engagement that you guys will have in the chat or you guys have with me. So anything you got, fire them in there to the chat. I always try to get to anything and everything that I can. And as always, I'm not just saying it for the funds aspect, but if you throw something up in a super chat, it automatically catches my eye and it guarantees that you're going to get that thrown up there. So I'll always give priority to that, but I like to get to everything as a whole. Love the comment here from David who says, yeah, DVOA is a great metric. I wish more analysts referred to it when discussing matchups. The problem is a lot of analysts usually just plug the metrics that the network they work for uses. So I feel like a lot of people don't work for Football Outsiders, who are the ones who who have created DVOA and funnel that information. So I wish more people used it too. I think it's phenomenal. So talked about this Panthers offense, state of flux, new offensive coordinator last week. It's the first week, so I don't want to use that as a regularity or try and track that too much because, again, small sample size, 1 week. But prior to that, the past 4 games prior to week 14, the Panthers only had 7 touchdowns. They were 28th in third down efficiency, 19.7 points per game, 28th in yards per game, 22nd in red zone touchdown percentage, and only 18 third quarter points. They had issues with a lack of adjustment with a limited route tree in their wide receiver routes, not from the perspective of their receivers couldn't do it, but just because they weren't using that. Their offense wasn't showing any nuance or any creativity. And now they have new offensive coordinator, Jeff Nixon, Matt Rule's offensive coordinator when they were together at Baylor. And it's going to be interesting to see what we see from this offense. As John Ellis mentioned earlier in this episode, Matt Rule wants to be a physical team. He wants to run the ball. He wants to play smash mouth football. But they don't necessarily have the horses for that up front on the offensive line or necessarily in the backfield. The Bills have shown vulnerability at times with their run defense, especially from a gap run defense perspective. So teams that are not running zone and going kind of more finesse runs, but teams that are running right at them, teams that are running powers, teams that are running pulls, the Patriots who ran G lead over and over again, the Colts who ran trap and wham, gap runs that really focus on moving people, establishing a hole, attacking it. We've seen the Bills struggle with that at times, not a ton. The Colts game was really the only one where they struggled consistently. Other times they've given up big plays like they did against the Patriots and like they did on the touchdown run for Leonard Fournette against the Buccaneers. But I think that's going to continue to happen with this Bills defense. And that's something I want to talk about too. The Bills are a one gap defense, right? And when I say that, I mean the responsibility they have, and especially up front. You can either, be a one gap team are a two gap team. When you're a one gap team, you have a defender that is responsible for a gap. They attack that gap. They are responsible for whatever happens in it. So if I have the A gap, to the right side of the center, that is my gap. I'm attacking the A gap. That's my gap. I don't have to worry about the B or the C or the other A. I'm attacking the A. That is my gap. These guys are going to be more smaller. They're going to be quicker. They're going to be better suited for pass rush. Think of Ed Oliver instead of Vita Vea, basically. Vita Vea is more of a two-gap player. Those guys occupy space. They have the ability to stack and hold a gap and be able to switch and go into another gap because of their space-eating ability, basically. Size. They're a little slower. They're more run defense in nature. And a lot of teams have one-gap players and one-gap systems now because, as I mentioned, one-gap players are usually better pass rushers because they are smaller and quicker and are able to attack and penetrate and be aggressive when it comes to their gaps. That works better against the pass. The Bills are a penetration-based defense. They want to get upfield. They want to attack gaps. They want to make toxic differential type plays for the defense. They want to make explosive plays for the defense. And we've seen that for the Bills at times. We've seen those tackles for loss. We've seen those plays get made in the backfield. But what's unfortunate is when you play teams that run gap style offenses and gap style runs, if you get too far upfield or if you penetrate in and are too aggressive in your gap, there's a chance you can take yourself out of the play. Like we saw with Ed Oliver against the Indianapolis Colts, where he would shoot the gap and he would almost make the play, but Jack Doyle would just give him a little push. And all of a sudden you have a huge gap between the center and the tackle because Ed Oliver got upfield too fast and tried to make a play. You're going to be out of position time to time when you're a one-gap defense playing against a power run team. And the Bills do not have the horses or the scheme desire from what Sean McDermott wants to do to play a two-gap style. They do not two-gap. That is not who they are. That is not what Sean McDermott wants to do. And that's not what they're built for. They are not built to eat space. They are not Vita Vea and Cam Hayward can do everything, but bigger, bulkier guys the guys like 3-4 defensive ends that can two-gap and do a variety of things like that. They want to be fast, aggressive. They want to penetrate. And you're going to get taken advantage of sometimes when it comes to those gap runs. And I see the question there from Devin saying, do you think we'll see a lot of Cam running the ball? I think you will see a lot of Cam running the ball. And as John mentioned earlier, he expects to see more gap runs with the new offensive coordinator and as a way to attack the Buffalo Bills defense. And looking at this Panthers offense coming in, they have a 32% usage rate on gap runs, which is 10th in the NFL. So just for reference, they've run 109 gap runs and 223 zone runs. As John mentioned, they love to run that wide zone with Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey has been banged up for a lot of the years, so they've tried to do different things. And Hubbard is a one-cut back. He's very fast. He can get upfield in a hurry. He can take advantage of some zone runs and cut back and find his own lane, but he's a potential quick hitter in gap runs. If we are not sound in our gap integrity and sound in our structure and we are not running gap exchanges properly and you leave a hole open, Hubbard can get through there in a hurry and he can turn a 1-yard gain into a 6 or 7 yard gain. And he can turn a 5 and 6 yard gain into 15 or even a potential house call. That worries me a little bit. I'm always going to be concerned about the running game just because the Bills don't have too much size up front. And because of the nature of their defense, you have to be so structurally sound and operate with so much gap integrity over and over and over. And when you're a one gap defense and when teams are going to run the ball against you, and you add in the fact that the Bills like to disguise coverage on the back end and they like to leave two high safeties. They like to leave Poyer and Hyde in the back, or they like to start them back out there in too high and then maybe bring one of them down post snap. Long story short, you don't always have advantages up front where you're able to out-gap or gap out against offenses, and offensives can out-gap you, create different gaps, move guys around, take a gap from the right and create it on the left like the Patriots did via G leads and pulling guards and tackles and all that stuff. So I would expect to see the Panthers attack in that regard. Cam Newton is their best running back still. And when you run your QB, you have a numbers advantage because the running back can now block for him and the quarterback's a ball carrier. So you don't just have a quote unquote wasted position where when the quarterback hands the ball off regularly, he's not occupying anybody. He's not blocking anybody. He's not doing anything. When you use your quarterback as a running back and you weaponize your quarterback like that, you have numbers advantage against the defense. So I would expect to see the Bills crowd the box against Carolina. I don't think the threat of the pass is there, especially vertical or especially vertically. Even though Robbie Anderson can fly and DJ Moore's fantastic. He can fly and he's very technically sound as well. But this is a unit that is not playing cohesively, that is in a state of flux from an organizational standpoint and from an on-field standpoint now. The Bills defense has the better matchup when it comes to the offense defense and where they can take advantage of the Panthers. As Anthony here, Highlander, well, I got to take you out now. As Anthony mentions, Cam almost beat the Bills in Buffalo. Yeah, that New England game was close last year. We had the Justin Zimmer, punch of God type thing that really saved it for the end. But the Pats had a good script against the Bills in the first game in Buffalo last year and almost took it. And comment here I wanted to go back to from Marissa. Marissa said, really looking for the Bills offensive line to step it up and not give up 34 pressures like last week with the Panthers. Burns, who has 27 pressures, and Reddick, who has 28 pressures and 10.5 sacks. That's going to be a key matchup for the Bills offense when we start to, talk about that side of the ball here in a minute. The Panthers got dudes, as we spoke about with John. We spoke about Brian Burns and Jeremy Chin. Hassan Reddick was one who I really liked in free agency. I wanted the Bills to potentially go after him. I thought he could be a high-valued guy, and he's shown it this year with the sack numbers that he's put up. And I wanted to kind of talk about the defense a little bit, which we're going to break into. But that's a really good comment there, Marissa. I'm always nervous for this Bills offensive line. We know what they are at this point. They're middling. Sometimes they're very good. Well, not very good. Sometimes they're above average. Sometimes they're very below average. The communication isn't always there. The execution isn't always there. They're limited in their physicality. They showed some positive signs against Tampa Bay. I'm hoping that what we saw open up in the run game starts to continue. Not necessarily running Josh all the time, but more pin and pulls and more runs that take advantage of the athleticism that some of the guys on the offensive line have, like Mitch Morse, like Spencer Brown. Even Gerald Williams pulling against Tampa Bay looked good at different times. So how this Bills offensive line performs is literally the number one storyline week in and week out every single week, regardless of opponent. And then when we play better opponents and better teams and teams that have stars and studs up front, or teams that have holistically good front sevens and good defensive lines, it becomes even more of a storyline. It gets put under a microscope even more. So it's always something to be concerned about. And talking about the offensive line for Carolina, one last quick little piece. I want to talk about the stuff percentage that they have from Football Outsiders. I love this metric. So stuffed percentage equals the percentage of runs where running backs are tackled at or behind the line of scrimmage. They've got a 19% stuffed rate, which is 28th in the NFL. So that's not good. So basically about 1/5 of all of their runs, their running back is either tackled at or behind the line of scrimmage. Not good for the Carolina Panthers. What they are pretty good at, though, is converting in short yardage situations. So they are 12th in the NFL in power success, which is the percentage of runs on third or fourth down where there's 2 yards or less to gain that either got a first down or a touchdown. This also includes runs on first and goal and second and goal from the 2-yard line or closer. So they win in short yardage. That's going to be a big thing in this game against Carolina, right? I expect Carolina to be good in short yardage because you've got a monster of a man at quarterback. You've got what Bills fans talk about all the time with Josh Allen. Run Josh Allen on third and short and second and short, get the first down, run him on the goal line, yada, yada. That originated with Cam Newton, and it's still applicable when it comes to Cam Newton. They're going to run him in those short yardage scenarios, and they've been successful all year, as evidenced by being 12th in power success, like I just mentioned. But now having Cam, he's not better than Christian McCaffrey, but you have a different dynamic when it comes to running the ball and converting in short yardage situation. He is the goal line back. He is the short yardage back. And again, when you run your QB, you create a numbers advantage up front. So that's a nice little piece for Carolina. Flipping to some more things when it comes to the Panthers, as I mentioned a couple things. So 32% gap run usage rate, which is 10th in the NFL, 62% zone run usage rate, which is 22nd. They only run play action to a usage rate of 14%, which is 29th in the NFL. So not a ton of play action coming from them. 10% screen. And then their personnel usage, again, this may change a little bit now that they have a new offensive coordinator, but they are in 11 personnel, so 3 wide, 64% of the time, and then 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 18% of the time. So 82% of their personnel packages are used up in 11 or 12 personnel. So that is Carolina offense in a decent degree, in a nutshell, like we mentioned with the information that John gave us earlier. Now I want to flip to the defensive side. I want to talk about some of the studs up there. So Jeremy Chin is fantastic in every way. Safety for the Carolina Panthers, second round pick in the 2020 draft. Someone who I really liked. As I mentioned, he was a huge draft crush for me. I wanted the Bills to be able to get him. I didn't care if it didn't make sense. I didn't care if it was something that was feasible. I just wanted Jeremy Chin to be a Buffalo Bill. I didn't care how or why or when. He has been killing it for Carolina. So he is tied for 15th in the NFL in stops. Stops are tackles that are made that are considered successful for the defense. So I mentioned this on the show before, but I always like to mention it just in case people forget or don't know. So a stop is a tackle, again, that's successful for the defense. So it's a tackle that's made on first down if it holds the offense to 45% of the yardage to go to the first down or less. On second down, it's a tackle that holds the offense to 60% or less. And on third and fourth down, it's a tackle that prevents the offense from getting a first down. He's 15th in stops. He has 36 of them on the year. So of all the defensive players in the NFL, Jeremy Chin is 15th in stops. He's first among all defensive backs, corners, safeties. He is first amongst all secondary players in stops, and then 15th amongst all defensive players. So he leads all defensive backs in stops, 15th amongst all defensive players in stops. As John mentioned, he plays in the box. He can do that Troy Polamalu thing where he can drop deep and play in the deep third and play on the back end of things, but he's also really good around the line of scrimmage. He can blitz. He can fill gaps. He can take on blockers. He's a good tackler. He is a do-it-all safety, and he's fantastic. I do not think he gets enough credit in Carolina or enough shine because, unfortunately, he plays in Carolina, and they're not having a very good year. Jeremy Chin is fantastic. And staying with that stops metric, because I think it's important. Raw tackles are nice to see how many tackles somebody has, but what kind of tackles are you making? Again, kind of like what we talked about with DVOA, because DVOA adds context, right? Stops add context to a tackle. If you make a tackle on third down, congratulations, you got a tackle. But if it's 3rd and 5 and you made a tackle 8 yards downfield, you still made the tackle, which is good, but the offense got a first down, right? There's a difference between making a tackle 3 yards past the first down on third down versus making a tackle at the line of scrimmage on third down or making a tackle in the backfield on third down. So I think stops is a fantastic metric. So Jeremy Chin, we mentioned what he has in stops. Shaq Thompson, Carolina Panthers linebacker, he's tied for 19th amongst all defenders with 35 stops, only 1 less than Jeremy Chin, and he's 15th amongst all linebackers. So he's still good around the line of scrimmage. He's rangy, former safety in college, can cover really well for a linebacker. Not as strong of a player as he was in the Panthers Super Bowl run when it was he and Thomas Davis and Luke Kuechly who were really patrolling that second level for Carolina. See, Michael just joined the chat saying, "What's up, Ant? Sorry I'm late. 1, welcome. 2, I don't forgive you. 3, I just saw your message in the Slack channel. I responded to it before this episode started. I'm sorry for my late response, but congratulations on making the fantasy playoffs in our Cover One Dynasty League. I'm glad that my horribly snake-bitten, injury-riddled team was able to pull one out for you this week and beat my opponent, which allowed you to do some leapfrog action and make the playoffs. So congratulations, Michael, and I'm glad that you're here. But the Panthers defense has some studs on it, right? So Jeremy Chin is the best, and that's with having somebody like Brian Burns on that defense. I like Chin more than I do Burns. Burns is having a bit of a down year, but he's still a very good player. We got Shaq Thompson, so player at the 3rd level, and Jeremy Chin, 2nd level, Shaq Thompson. They still have CJ Henderson and Stephon Gilmore, who are still good corners. Gilmore isn't playing necessarily at the MVP defender level that he was for New England, but he's still very, very, very above average in terms of serviceability. But Brian Burns, some pressures, having a bit of a down year. He's 35th in pressures, depending on what site you're using to track. I use PFF for their pressure stats. He's 35th in pressures on the year with 39, which is 25th amongst all edge rushers. Hassan Reddick on the other side is 38th in pressures on the year with 36, which is 27th amongst edge rushers. They're both good. They're both in the top 30 for edge rushers. I know we kind of expect Brian Burns to be a bit higher. He's one of the best edge rushers in football, and he's still getting better. He's still young. He's the one who, if you happen to remember, who Mac Jones tried to go Kurt Angle on and snap his ankle on a turnover between the Panthers and Patriots several weeks ago. Brian Burns is a stud. Hassan Reddick is someone who I still think doesn't get the credit he deserves. He put up really strong sack numbers last year, but 5 of them came in one game against the Giants. People discredited his total sack total a little bit, but he's signed in Carolina. He's having a good year opposite Brian Burns. Derek Brown, a top first-round draft pick for them a couple years back, really good. A lot of people wanted Carolina to take Isaiah Simmons to do it all, safety / linebacker from Clemson. Carolina did not. They took Derek Brown. He's been a force in the middle, as John mentioned earlier in the show. They've got good people on this defense. They've got studs. And as Marissa mentioned earlier in the comments, talking about the offensive line holding up against Carolina in terms of their pressures, we mentioned it. The offensive line is always going to be a storyline going into any game, but especially when you go into a game against a team that has studs up front. I genuinely think Brian Burns is a stud. He is an elite edge rusher. I think Hassan Reddick he's not elite, but he's in a strong B+ tier. He's going to be a threat in this game. Derek Brown is in a strong tier on the interior. They've got guys who can go up front. And then they got playmakers in the second level with Shaq Thompson and one of my favorite young players in the entire NFL in Jeremy Chin. Not even young players, one of my favorite players in totality in Jeremy Chin. He's phenomenal. They've got players on this defense. Again, as I mentioned, they are 10th in defensive DVOA. They're 6th against the pass and 21st against the run. And that's with having a deficient offense holding them back, quote unquote, at times. So this defense can still play. It's part of the reason why when people were talking about, it's fine, let's not play Allen this week. Let's just bench him and roll Trubisky out against the Panthers. No. I think Carolina's defense is good. They have a good unit. I think people don't know how good they are. And they've got studs. And they've got some scheme to go along with it. I want to pull out some advanced defensive things for this defense. They're versatile. They're versatile, but they go very defensive back heavy in their personnel usage. They run a 2-4-5. So 2 down, these numbers when I say so, like a 2-4-5, that's 2 linemen, 4 linebackers, 5 defensive backs. And some sites track it differently depending on, is Brian Burns considered a linebacker or a defensive lineman? So is a 2-4-5, if he's considered a linebacker, it's a 2-4. Maybe if he's considered a defensive lineman, it's a 3-3, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, their top 6, their top 6 personnel alignments on defense all have 4 defensive backs or higher. I shouldn't even count the 4th. So 5 of their top 6 personnel packages in terms of frequency of use have 5 defensive backs or higher. Their number 1 personnel grouping on defense is a 2-4-5. They have a usage rate of that at 38%. That is the 6th most for that formation. Second, they run a traditional 3-4-4, 3 down linemen, 4 linebackers, 4 in the secondary. They run that at an 18% usage rate, but they run a 3-5-5 at 15%, a 2-3-6 at 12%, a 4-2-5 at 8%, and a 3-2-6 at 5%. Granted, it depends on how you classify those front players, but forget that. Focus on the point that, again, 5 of their top 6 personnel groupings on defense include 5 defensive backs or more. Speaks to the nature of today's NFL, but it also speaks to the versatility they have in someone like Jeremy Chin, who you can use as a defensive back, but he can come up and function as an outside linebacker, or he can play in the box and maintain gap integrity and help you gap out against offenses and allow you to both spill and force against the run. He does a lot. He allows for that versatility on the back end. And this team likes to play fast. They are a speedy defense, and they're going to get after it. And again, that's another reason why I don't think it's a huge storyline now, because Josh is healthier, we think. But I know there were some people that were like, just screw it. Let's just rest Josh and play Trubisky. No. Question here from Steven. Is Brown comparable to Oliver? And then he rephrased in terms of tier. Ed Oliver's made a huge jump this year. A really big jump. I'd say they're similar in terms of tier, and it depends on scheme in terms of what you're asking them to do and what they're going to do. But I think Derek Brown is a very good interior player. I think with the way Ed has played this year and the trajectory he's on, I'm going to put him slightly above, but they're close. Ooh, Charles. Charles's question is man or zone and blitz percentage. Charles, I'll tell you. Man coverage percent, 31% usage rate. That is the 8th most in the NFL. Zone coverage usage rate, 54%, which is 24th in the NFL. So more zone than man, which is the majority of teams in the NFL. But they do have the 8th highest man coverage usage rate in the NFL at 31%. And then as far as blitz rate, 25% blitz rate, which is 11th. So close to being a top 10 unit, but they only blitz 1 on every 4 plays. When they do, it can be chaotic. Shaq Thompson can blitz. Jeremy Chin can blitz. They can bring it from multiple levels of the defense, but you don't necessarily have to when you've got guys up front like Brian Burns and Hassan Reddick coming off the edges who are just forces in their own right. So very interesting from them. And then from a coverage perspective, actually, no, I'll stay on the comments here in the questions. Comment here from Devin saying, hate to say it, but Spencer Brown got beat pretty bad on a number of pass rushes last week. And then Roman had a nice comment in the follow-up saying he's a rookie. He just needs more time to learn how to counter less common moves. And then he had another follow-up. Oh, there's a Roman show right now. His athleticism will take him very far once he learns a bit more technique and improves his mental game. I think that's spot on, Roman. I don't really have too much to add. That's really what it is with Spencer Brown. He's tremendously athletic. He's physical. He's raw. I don't think anyone who was charting or plotting this season expected Spencer Brown to play a significant role in this team. I said it going into this year that if Spencer Brown was needed on the offensive line, that meant things went badly for the offensive line. My initial thought of it was it's because injuries happen, but they haven't too much, knock on wood. It's really just been poor play and trying to find the right grouping and the right chemistry up front. Cody Ford did not take that step forward. John Feliciano has been inconsistent at times. Darrell Williams did not look good at right tackle like he did last year. He does not look like the same player who had a very, very strong week against arguably the best edge rusher in football in TJ Watt last year when the Bills played the Steelers. Darrell Williams did not look like that guy at right tackle this year. He looks slower. He looks stiff. He does not look like a fluid, proper technical right tackle like he did last year. So he had to kick into guard. Plus you have the instability at guard. So that's why they were trying to mix and match. Long story short, Spencer Brown is ahead of schedule in terms of playing time. He should not be starting right now, but he is, and he's very raw. He's got some tremendous traits and things that you cannot teach and cannot coach, much like Greg Rousseau, much like Josh Allen. But with that, as Roman said, he nailed it. And as Michael said, Roman said it, to echo that point, he's going to have games where he struggles. He's going to have games where he struggles against elite rushers. Shaq Barrett got him several times against Tampa Bay. He got him with some hesitation. He got him with just some quick chops and good hand technique and got around the edge. He jumped some snap counts and beat him around the edge, which is also a little on the quarterback. But you're going to see that from time to time with Spencer Brown. You're going to see him make a play where you're like, dude, you saw the play that rookie made? Oh my God, he pancaked this dude. Or, oh man, look at him pull in space. Or, man, that was really good pass protection. Look how we buried that guy. And then there's a good chance that on the next play, you're going to be like, oh God, he just got beat so bad. That's going to happen from time to time. So I expect to see that up and down continue with Spencer Brown. And that's something, again, that I'm worried about going into this game because Brian Burns is elite. Brian Burns is legit, and Hassan Reddick isn't elite, but he's still very good. That's a plus matchup for the Carolina Panthers. Their D-line against the Bills O-line is a plus matchup for the Carolina Panthers. That is a huge thing. Huge, huge thing to watch. And comment here from Michael. I haven't even read it yet, but Michael's usually spot on. Michael said, Kyle Van Noy mentioned something along the lines of them figuring out Brown's tendencies during the game versus New England and were able to use it to get pressure on Allen on Monday Night Football. Pardon me for the silence. For the audio listeners, I had to take a drink of water there. That's an interesting point there that Van Noy said that. I wouldn't doubt it. I honestly think it was the same thing on the other side of the ball with Gregory Rousseau. He's been very functional and above average so solidly against the run. But I think he cooled off a bit in the pass rush game because he doesn't have that technique piece. He doesn't have that technical side to his game in terms of moves and things where he can consistently beat offensive linemen with more than just a long arm and his size and length and speed and strength in that. So Rousseau and Brown are very similar with one another in terms of how raw they are. The more they play, the more they get coached up, the more they see and face good competition, the better that they will get. What's unfortunate is we're going to have to live with that roller coaster, especially with Spencer Brown, because, again, you're going to have some snaps where he's a vulnerability on the offensive line. You hope that you can just mitigate that enough and that the positives outweigh the negatives, but that's something we're going to have to live with for the entire rest of the year. Staying with the Panthers defense, a couple more things I just wanted to mention. This one's very interesting. So they run a one high shell, so showing a single high safety look pre-snap 61% of the time, which is second in the entire NFL. They run a two high shell 31% of the time, which is 31st, second last in the NFL for usage rate. So they are going to show you a single high pre-snap look. Maybe Jeremy Chinn's back there. Maybe he's around the line of scrimmage. Long story short, expect to see a safety in the box pre-snap. However, post-snap, they are in single high coverages 58% of the time, which is the third most. So they're going to show you pre-snap, single high safety, but then 58% of the time, they're just going to stay in it and still have some sort of coverage with single high safety. Now, I mentioned the numbers earlier. Might be man coverage. They run man coverage 31% of the time, 8th highest usage rate, but they still are a predominantly zone coverage team at 54%. So you're going to see a single high safety pre-snap, and you're going to see a single high safety post-snap. Now, maybe they alter that a little bit. Maybe they do what teams did for the majority of this year against the Bills, playing two high safeties, right, against the Bills, not allowing them to get anything over the top, making the Bills have to either run against a light box or stay patient and matriculate the ball down the field. But as we've seen the last couple of weeks, Buccaneers played a decent amount of single high, and then the Pats did a ton of it. Granted, there was the weather and everything involved in that game, but it'll be interesting to see what the Panthers do because they are a single high safety team, both pre-snap and post-snap. So seeing if they continue that in this game will tell you a lot about how teams are starting to view or continuing to view this Bills offense. Because again, the Panthers are a good defense. They're 10th in defensive DVOA. They are a good defense, right? So this isn't like, well, whatever, we're just going to throw what we got at them, or, we have to adjust because they're going to destroy us. No, it's not about that. Seeing what the Panthers do for this chess match is very interesting. They are a single high safety team, pre and post snap. If they stay in it, that means they feel confident in what they do and they can use it and still beat the Buffalo Bills, even though the Bills have had success against single high looks like they did. Granted, the Jets are a bad football team, but like the Bills did against the Jets, using personnel and using play action and creating different looks and attacking the intermediate to the deep with play action and crossers and benders and all that kind of stuff. So the Bills have done well against single high defenses traditionally. It's been varying this year with a lot of what they've had going on, but I'm interested to see what the Panthers play against the Bills and how much they respect the run and what kind of boxes they show. That's also another one as well. The Panthers run a 7-man box 32% of the time, which is the fourth most in the NFL. They only give a light box on 42% of snaps. That is their predominant usage percentage in terms of box usage on the defense, right? 42% is their most, but that's 31st in the NFL. So they run light boxes the second least in terms of usage rate. And while it's still their most heavily played box usage rate on defense, it's still the second least in the NFL. And they run a stacked box on 19% of defensive snaps, which is 7th in the NFL. So again, it goes along with what? Single high looks. If you have one safety up top, that means the other one is somewhere around the box, right? So you're going to have 7-man boxes. You're going to have stack box looks, which is 8 or more. So don't expect to see a lot of light boxes, a ton. Again, they are decently balanced when it comes to light and stack boxes. You're going to see some variation in that a little bit. You're going to see some single high safety. We're going to see what the Bills can do. At the end of the day, this game for me on the offensive side of the ball for the Bills is going to be decided by their offensive line, what they can do against the front for the Panthers. The Panthers can really legitimately go. They can rush the passer with some studs on the defensive line along the interior and the edge with Burns and Reddick and Brown. Shaq Thompson, I still think is a good linebacker. He's not what he used to be, but he's still good and still very, very functional. And Jeremy Chin, to me, is one of the best young defensive players in football, but I think he's legitimately on his way to becoming one of the best defenders in football. And you don't really know about him because he doesn't get a ton of press, much like this whole Panthers team besides Cam Newton. But I think you'll hear about him a little this Sunday. I expect him to flash and do some things because he's got a lot of ability. And this matchup at the end of the day is, 1,000%. Roman in the comments just said Jeremy Chin is a jack of all trades. He is. I'm going to take a sip of water here for the stretch run home. There is no negotiating when it comes to the outcome of this game for the Buffalo Bills. Every single game down the stretch from now on is must win, especially against, no disrespect to the Panthers, but especially against lower quality teams. No negotiation, must win. Same thing with the Pats game next week, must win. But especially against the lower tier, quote unquote teams. Again, no disrespect, but Panthers, absolute must win. Falcons, absolute must win. Jets, absolute must win. The Pats is a must win as well, but obviously they're a higher caliber team than the other three down the stretch. This starts it. This is the playoff push. That's why it's titled in this episode. This was really nice. I hate pulling stuff up, but Devin says, always love your insightful analysis, and I appreciate your hard work. Thank you so much, Devin. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. I find it corny to pull up stuff and pat yourself on the back, but thank you, man. I appreciate it. I also appreciate it I think it was Marissa. I forget who said it earlier, who noticed, hasn't been a lot of comments on this one. I got a new Christmas tree. No one's talked about it for a majority of this episode. I'm kind of disappointed. I got the little tree that we keep up all year round, right? Change the garland on that, right? Green garland all the way around now, no more red. And it's got a mix of some lights in the garland. They're not real lights, but they're like plastic lights mixed into the garland. I put that to the left, right? And then for Christmas, got this big, awesome, fake white snow tree. Nice red ornaments, nice red garland. That's right, Roman. Roman says the tree is way fuller. It is way fuller. No one's commented on it. I'm pretty disappointed. Someone did earlier. I think it was Marissa. Thank you. I appreciate it. My wife appreciates it as well. This tree will stay up, I'm thinking, through January, and then it'll come down at the end of January. The little tree will go back to the right, and then this will come back out earlier next year, probably around November-ish time through the holiday season. Just got it last week. Then thank you, Roman. Roman says it fills up the space pretty nicely. Devin says the tree upgrade is on point. Thank you. Charles says you need some blue in that tree. I agree, Charles. I'm glad you said that. I know my wife is watching this, and I hope she heard it, and I know she heard it. I do think the tree needs some more blue. She disagrees. So thank you, Charles. But yeah, new tree game going on back there. But as I said, before I got distracted by One Punch Man says, it was the first thing I noticed, but I failed to make my thoughts public. It's okay. I appreciate you for noticing. Thank you very much. You guys know I love my trees, so thank you so much. This game is a must-win for the Buffalo Bills, right? This is a game that the Bills have to win. It is I don't want to say easy, because no team is easy to beat in the NFL, right? This is a very winnable game for the Buffalo Bills. Plus matchup for the Bills holistically, right? To beat the Carolina Panthers offense. I don't think they can run with this Buffalo Bills defense, right? I think, you know what? Hold on, let me go back. I'm seeing stuff about the tree again. J-Dub says, wait until after the color blast week to put the blue in. Oh, very interesting. Roman asked, is that from Target? No, it's not. It's from Joanne Fabrics, and it's fantastic. And then Michael says, red and white, the tree is a color rush supporter. This is also a side thing, but I'm going to get back to my statement on this game as we start to close things out. I want color rush jerseys. Give me red pants, white top. That's what I want. Or give me red top, white pants. I want that. I need that in my life. The red on red is cool. Give me red top, white pants, or red pants, white top. Give it to me. Give it to me. I need it. Devin says my wife is in charge of the creative decisions. Yeah, she kind of is. She's kind of like the producer of the show, unofficially, but she's responsible for a lot of this going on behind me, and I appreciate her for it, but I'm going to get some blue in that tree. But I digress. No more tree talk for now, even though I kind of just want to talk about the tree. And I got another comment coming in now. Will you just look at that tree? Just look at it. Go Bills. Appreciate you. I should just do an episode on the tree and lie about what the content is going to be and then just talk about the tree the whole time. But I digress. No more tree talk right now, although I do appreciate any comments that continue to come in about the tree and decor that I got going on behind me. Must-win game for the Buffalo Bills. There are certain areas where they are going to be threatened. Oh, that's awesome. I got distracted by this comment. Bills Mafia here in Dubai. Greetings. Awesome from Tom. Appreciate you, Tom. And thanks for stopping by, man. That's awesome. Bills Mafia is literally everywhere. Must win for the Bills. And while I am nervous about the matchup of the Bills offensive line versus the Panthers defensive line, and I know that the Panthers defense is good and they do have some guys, still think the Bills present enough problems to attack this Panthers defense. I think they can move the ball against this Panthers defense. I think this Panthers defense is good, but they have shown some vulnerabilities in the intermediate. They've shown some vulnerabilities in their coverage. I think with what the Bills showed last week, that gap running type of offense, it wasn't a lot. The sample size wasn't huge, but the Bills ran more gap than zone last week. Again, it wasn't a ton. The sample size is small. They ran eight gap runs to 5 zone runs. I'm hoping that is a sign of what's to come. I think this offense can succeed in the running game if they use more gap runs, if they use more pin and pulls, if they use more GT bash like they did on Josh Allen's touchdown run from the Tampa Bay 18. Pin and pulls, counters, powers, get Mitch Morse moving, get Spencer Brown moving, even get Darrell Williams moving. He showed some ability that I was not expecting from him in the run game in terms of mobility. I think the Bills started to turn a corner with that. If they can do that against this Panthers front, because again, Brian Burns is a stud. Reddick is a stud. Those guys are a little bit light. So let's get nasty. Let's get physical. Let's run it right at them. Let's pin them with tight ends or with Gabriel Davis cracking down. Let's toss around the outside. Let's push them down inside, wash them out, hit them at any and every point, and then let's run some play action. Take advantage of those single high safety looks, play action, crossers behind the second level defenders, put that single high zone look and even man looks into conflict. I think the Bills can do that working into that intermediate part of the field. And then on the other side of the ball, I think it's a hands down big time plus advantage matchup for the Bills defense. This Bills defense should shut down and significantly limit the Panthers offense, given the current status. Again, I don't think John Ellis tried to paint it too much doom and gloom for Panthers fans, but it's kind of a dumpster fire going on right now in Carolina from an on-field and off-the-field perspective. They are already down. Bills defense needs to keep them down. Kick them in the face, foot on the throat, punch them in the mouth. That's it. Do not allow Carolina to get going. Do not allow Cam Newton to start feeling himself and getting that Cam Newton swagger that he likes to operate with. Keep them down. No momentum from the get-go. This is a plus matchup for the Bills. Take advantage of the Panthers' weak offensive line, penetrate, get pressure, tackles for loss, put them in second and third and longs, areas where they do not want to be. The Bills can do that. The Bills have the ability to keep the Panthers to 2nd and 7 or 2nd and 11, 2nd and 12, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. Make them have to beat you vertically, right? Beat you in the passing game. Do not allow Cam to get going. Don't allow Hubbard to make any plays from that backfield, right? The Bills defense can do that. This is a big time plus matchup. I think that is what heavily sways this game in favor of the Bills. Come out, make a statement, dominate the Panthers at home, and then go into New England next week and shut the world up when you beat the Patriots in Foxborough, hopefully. But that's what we got for this episode of Disguised Coverage. I'm going to throw up the banner that says Toodles, you guys. I'm going to read these last bit of comments because I saw something. Where are they? Ben asked me he said, way off topic, but Ant, did you see the new Fantastic Beasts trailer? No, I did not. Didn't even know that was a thing. That's immediately what I'm going to do right after I upload this episode. So thank you for that, Ben. Devin says a Cover One film room episode on decorating the tree. I think that's hilarious, and I would love to do it. I don't think Eric Turner's going to sign up for it, but I would love to do that. Charles with a nice comment here. If the Bills set up the run using the pass and let those athletic edge rushers get too far upfield, we'll be fine. Spot on. If Brian Burns wants to get upfield and bend around the edge, cool. Let him take himself out of the play and right where he was. Fantastic. Roman gets me. Roman says here, Ant always loves himself some pin and pull Morse. I remember watching it in the game, and I knew Ant would talk about it on the pod this week. I 1,000% did. Appreciate you for knowing that. And also, I put some film clips up of the All-22 of some pin and pulls with a variety of guys, but especially some Mitch Morse, and put some stuff up on Twitter for that. So, yeah, you know me. You knew that was going to happen. And Devin says the Bills O-line looked like they actually learned a few things from the Colts O-line in the second half against Tampa. Yeah, they ran some more pin and pulls. They ran more gap runs. So I'm excited for that. And I'm excited for everybody who stopped by to watch this show live with me on this episode. Thank you guys very much. We had a tremendous guest in Mr. John Ellis. Give him a follow on Twitter. He's so knowledgeable when it comes to the Panthers, but not even just with the Panthers. He's just good and knowledgeable when it comes to the game as a whole. So give him a follow on Twitter at One Panthers Place. And thank you to him for stopping by and joining me on this episode. Thank you to all of you for being with me here live on this episode. And if you weren't here live, as I always say, if you watch later, listen later, whatever have you, thank you so much for your listen, your view, your download, whatever. It means more to me than you will ever know. Please rate and review and subscribe to Disguised Coverage and to Cover One. While you are here, I know there's a bunch of you guys still watching here live. Please drop a like for this video on your way out. Please, please, please. Or if you're watching this later, drop a like. It goes a very long way in terms of helping myself and the entire Cover One team to track and trend in front of more eyes so we continue to grow and do bigger and better things for the game of football and this awesome community that we have that supports us. So that would be awesome. Rates, reviews, subscriptions, and likes, tremendously helpful, as are all the kind words. Thank you guys so much for Michael throwing in the toodles and into the comments. I appreciate you, Michael. Yeah, I appreciate you guys any and every episode, any and every week. And this week is no different. I know it's kind of the same old spiel every week for these outros, but I genuinely appreciate every single one of you guys. Thank you so much. And girls. I say guys as a general thing to describe people, but guys and girls, I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you guys so much. And start the playoff push this week. Bills got to win, non-negotiable. Come out, smack Carolina in the face, put them down early, and then on to New England. But don't look past Carolina because they still got some studs. They still got some guys who can play. This is a big game from the perspective of what the Bills do going forward. Let's see if the second half Buffalo Bills team that outplayed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, let's see if that team is here to stay. Let's see if that team is for real and what we get from them. Download Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code COVER1 to get yourself a free $10 from Underdog when you deposit $10. They've been an awesome fantasy partner and group that we've had since we started the Cover One Fantasy Show before the season started. So they've been awesome in every single way. The link for the Underdog Fantasy app and promo code is in the episode show notes, as is the link for the online menu for One Pie Pizza, sponsor of Disguised Coverage and friend of the show and friend of mine. I like to consider those guys over there now because they're fantastic. And also, Cover One Premium membership. Michael, who's here in the chat, he knows all about the premium membership and the access to all the awesome breakdowns and bill stuff that you get, the Slack channel that you get that so many of the Cover One team are always involved in. And it's literally just a giant group chat with all the premium members talking football and life and anything and everything at all times. It's fantastic. The link for that is also in the episode description. Got a lot going on. Busy time. Christmas is next week. I wish I could get more trees and just have my entire background be trees. That'd be crazy and awesome at the same time. Man, that'd be a good time. But This week's important. Let's get this win, beat Carolina, on to New England, and hopefully on to the playoffs, and maybe even a division championship and at least one home game in the playoffs. Big, 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 big week. Please drop a like, rate, review, and subscribe. Tell your family, friends, loved ones, all that stuff about Disguise Coverage, about the show. Text them the links to the episodes and to Cover One. We're trying to grow and do bigger and better things as we close out 2021 and start on 2022. And we got a ton of stuff coming. Always. I think we're the best brand out there when it comes to Buffalo Bills content and even in football content in general. The knowledge of this game, X's and O's, scheme, salary cap stuff, anything and everything that applies to the game of football, especially to the Buffalo Bills, but anything and everything, we got you covered at Cover One. Tell your family, friends, and loved ones, or if you think we suck, tell your enemies and try and ruin their day. That's what it is. I appreciate any and every kind word. Michael says we're the best Bills community out there. Hell yeah, Michael. I appreciate you. I messaged you back in Slack. I forgot. I'm sorry. I slept on messaging you back because I just saw it today. I messaged you back. Appreciate you as always. Appreciate everybody. Hope you and your family and friends and loved ones all stay safe and are doing well. Take a bit of a break and then come back at 9 o'clock for the Cover One Buffalo Show with Greg Thompson and Aaron Quinn. They have a tremendous guest tonight. Cover One has you covered at all times. Be kind to one another. I will see you all next week. And as always, go Bills.